brilliant run. Sort of as we came out of lockdown, when Hull were bad, he was still good, and that's what impressed me most about Tumavarvi. So I went with King and Tumavarvi. Alan?
Again, slightly different. I think it just shows how difficult this one is to pick. I went with Reece Lane. Some freakishly good kind of support play and setting his winger away kind of stuff, particularly later on in the year. And I just went for Toby King as well because, the guy's just been growing as a centre year on, year out. So, for me, they were my two picks.
And who made the team, Al?
So, the choices that people went for, they went for Nagama as the first choice. We picked by 58% of people. And they also agreed with Toby King, which was picked by 51%. Nagama is the first player this year who makes a second SLP Dream Team appearance, who was also picked in 2019.
So into the halfbacks, it's a pretty tough one to pick from the top three. I think 2 out of the top 3. Then it dropped off a little bit for me this year. But the shortlist was Aidan Caesar, Jackson Hastings, Johnny Lomax, and then the other people to make up the shortlist were Josh Drinkwater, Luke Gale, and Tuilola here. I went for the kind of obvious here. I went for Caesar and Hastings. I kind of picked the two that had the most influence on what their own sides did. Luke Gale was close in that kind of conversation, but he only did it in the cup, so it wasn't consistent enough. And Lomax was just behind Hastings for me this year. What about you, David? Who did you pick alongside Lomax?
Aidan Caesar. Actually, again, it was close, this one, because I really like Hastings, notwithstanding the fact that he now plays for the enemy. But in the end, I went along with Hastings and Kevin Brown's own view that Johnny Lomax is the best player in the league. So he had to go in, and I put Aidan Caesar alongside him because he has been incredibly good this year up at Huddersfield. And maybe he's the reason Watson's ended up going up there.
What about you, Tim?
Yeah, I went for Hastings and Lomax. I thought that Hastings, you just couldn't deny that. I still have a question mark about Aidan Caesar around whether does he look a lot better than he actually is because of what's around him. So I didn't feel like I could pick him in my dream team. So I went for Hastings and Lomax, and I think Johnny Lomax has had an excellent season, all in all.
What about you, Al?
I agreed with you. I went with Caesar and Hastings because they were their most... Certainly Caesar was head and shoulders above the rest of his kind of teammates. And Hastings was very influential in Wigan this year. So for me, they're the two most obvious choices. Lomax played well, but I don't think he's been as consistent this year as he has been in other years for me.
And I don't know if that was because Farge was maybe a little bit better or Lomax was a little bit off, but I remember certainly the start of the season Lomax wasn't as great when Caesar was fantastic, all the way back in that different world we used to live in where we could hug people. The winning halves on the votes were Caesar with 68% of the votes and Hastings, who was picked by 52%. It is Hastings' second SLP Dream Team selection in a row. Right, let's move into the props then. Tim, do you want to take us through it?
Yeah, so the selections on the shortlist were Alex Walmsley, Chris Hill, Julian Busquet, Mike Cooper, Mikolaj Lejki and Sui Matagi. So I went for Alex Walmsley, because I think he's been the head and shoulders and moustache above everybody else this season by quite some chalk. And I actually went for Mikolaj Lejki. I think he's improved massively. I think he's really offered something, and he's started to turn himself into a starting prop rather than a bench forward.
He certainly had a coming out year, I think. He's made himself like a significant part of that Leeds side. He's come of age this year, Mikolaj Lejki. I agree with that for certain.
And I think, it did look like under Ferner he was possibly drifting out the club, where he just didn't seem to get on. He didn't seem to get picked much, but he's really come of age under Agar, and Agar's really worked with him and for him. So I think he's really blossomed under that new regime.
David, there's no criticism of any home team bias here in any shape whatsoever. Who did you pick?
I picked Alex Walmsley. I'd like to know who were the 9% that didn't pick Alex Walmsley.
Fucking idiots who don't have eyes.
Yeah, there you go. So Walmsley, and I picked Mike Cooper. I always think he's slightly small for a prop Cooper, but bloody hell, there's a heart in there. And he's got real leg drive and an amazing engine on him. He'd be one. I like Oledzki. He's still young, but he'd be. If I look around at the other clubs, Cooper would be the person from the Super League that I wouldn't mind seeing coming over to Saints.
Ooh. What about you, Alan?
Walmsley, obviously, goes without saying.
Bye.
My second pick. Yep. Thanks.
Yeah.
My second pick, Mike Cooper. Cooper is the player that Chris Hill used to be this year. And I think on multiple occasions this year, I've seen Mike Cooper take that team on his back and drag them to good performances. So to me, Mike Cooper, he got very close to Alex Walmsley to me in terms of level of performance this year. So they were the obvious two candidates for me.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you've said. And David's given the game away a little bit, but how 9% of people chose not to pick Alex Walmsley. I nearly went through the voting form and just deleted any forms that didn't choose Alex Walmsley, because I don't understand what they've seen to pick anyone else ahead of him this year. He's been the best prop by a distance in the competition this year over the whole piece. And Mike Cooper, like you're saying, Al, has been fantastic and a massive driving force for Warrington's performances, I feel, this year. It's Walmsley's second selection. He got 56%, by the way, Mike Cooper. It's Walmsley's second selection after being picked back in 2017 as well. So good on him getting back into the side. Hooker was another difficult one, Alan. And you didn't make me put anyone not deserving on the shortlist this time.
I think there were three obvious candidates this year, so we had a choice between James Roby, the Man of Steel himself, Paul McShane, and Sam Powell.
There's no point asking David who he picked.
No, we know that one, and I agreed with him. James Roby, for me, is always will be likely to be the best hooker in the league, so he was an obvious choice.
I went exactly the same way. There was no one else even in the radar for me. It was James Roby and then James Roby second.
Well, I actually didn't go for James Roby on this one. It was a tough call. I mean, McShane, for the reasons why we talked about Cooper, Caesar.
Yeah.
I think he would get a nod on that basis. He was definitely the best player and most consistent player at Castleford, and was one of the best 2 or 3 players in the first third of the season that we've all forgotten about, apart from the Man of Steel voting committee. But I actually went for Sam Powell, and I went for Sam Powell because I've seen him take a step forward this year. He scored with the traditional 2020 asterisk 10 tries this year. He was given 10 tries this year, but he added a lot more to his game, I feel, this year, and he was very consistent as well throughout 2020 with Sam Powell, and probably because I think he'd taken a step up, whereas Roby just hit the heights that he hits. I went with Sam Powell ahead of him on that basis, but I certainly thought he deserved to be in this company this time around. But yeah. How did the other people see it, Tim?
Yep, so James Roby won with 57% of the vote. It's Roby's second time in the SLP Dream Team after being the hooker in 2018 as well.
Only his second time?
It's unbelievable.
Well, Darryl Clark was in there last year, weren't he?
Yeah,
he was immense last year.
Darryl Clark's been a standout hooker for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
So I'm not that surprised. I suppose the only surprise is Clark's been pretty anonymous this year, really.
True. He wasn't. Do you know what? The most surprising thing about Darrell Clarke this year is his average meters per carry was 8.6 meters per carry, which sounds pretty good, doesn't it? But for him, that's like a meter per carry down on what he's averaged since this show started, since I've been tracking this sort of stuff. He normally is up near 10 meters a carry. Okay, into the second row, where we also discovered that some of our listeners/voters are stupid because there was one obvious choice from the shortlist of Ben Curry, Kalepi Tanganoa, Liam Farrell, James Bentley, Reece Martin and Zeb Taylor, and it would be no shock to anyone that Liam Farrell was one of my two choices, not just because I'm a Wigan fan, but because the guy has made 120 odd meters per game, nearly 8 meters, about 80 meters per carry this year, and has made 40 tackles per game at a tackle success rate of 98%. Just what's your fucking reason for not picking him? Anyone who didn't. So here's where David comes in. Oh, no, but my second choice was James Bentley.
Wow.
My second choice was James Bentley. It was between him and Kalepi Tanganoa. It was a very close call, but I went with James Bentley in the end. Just because he was in a team that he was a big part of a team, and he forced his way into a starting position in a top level team this year, which he wasn't looked upon as a starting player at the start of the year. So I'm really impressed by that from James Bentley. But David, did you bring it in yourself to vote for a Wigan player?
I did. I voted for Farrell and Bentley in that order.
Good. Alan?
So, given the option to choose two Saints players, I actually chose a Wigan player and a Saints player.
Yeah. Well, you're back on my good side.
There you are.
You never left it, really. Go on, Alan.
Just a quick warning about your volume. I went for James Bentley and Kalepi Tanganoa.
Fucking ridiculous. Totally ridiculous. You've embarrassed yourself. Tim.
Well, I went for Ben Curry and James Bentley.
You fucking ridiculously embarrassed yourself. You?
You guys could be giving me a regular show slot at this rate.
Unbelievable.
It's not that I thought Farrell had a bad year. He had a very good year. I just thought that James Bentley was one of the outstanding stories of the year, frankly, playing everywhere and being a fantastic player. And when it came down to the choice between Farrell and Tanganoa, I just thought, fuck it, Mark won't like it, so I'll pick Tanganoa.
Is it my argument with James Roby as well, I suppose, in a way, that Liam Farrell is that exceptional that you expect these levels from him, whereas you might not have expected it from the other people?
I think there is an element of that, yeah, definitely, in the sense that you weren't expecting this kind of level of performance from Tanganoa at the start of the year, and Bentley for the same reason. And you do expect good things from Farrell, and it's very easy to miss them.
What's your excuse, Tim?
Well, I think that Liam Farrell is clearly not the player he once was, so he's on the decline.
Oh dear. Oh. The men selected are Farrell with 68% of the vote and Bentley with 42%. So this is another area where we went slightly different from the main Dream Team in the SLP Dream Team, with Bentley getting in ahead of Tanganoa. Farrell is picked for a second successive year in the SLP Dream Team, as he should be, as he deserves to be. The final one, another really tough one to call, loose forward, Alan.
Yep. Obviously not... You wouldn't think there's many candidates, but there were 4 strong ones this year. So you had a choice between Joe Cater, Luke Yates, Michael Lawrence and Morgan Knowles. And I will say my choice this year, purely because of the guy's effort and work rate, is the machine himself, Michael Lawrence. What say you, Tim?
Do you know, I genuinely can't remember how I voted. It was down to 2 of them. It would have been between the machine and Joe Cater for me. I